Yeah, it's only 125. But hey, look, guess how many slides are in lecture 5?
9.
9. This is my shortest slide deck across all the things I've ever done. 9.
In your whole life.
Probably.
Very good.
Yes.
For class purposes, how's that?
I'm trying to think of like when I had assignments in my research methods classes in undergrad to make PowerPoints. And at the time, that was like a brand new technology that no one knew how to do. And the fact that we were learning how to do it was like actually cool. My son makes PowerPoints. For his book reports in 5th grade, they called them book talks. But yeah, he uses like Google Slides and stuff to make PowerPoints. So, yeah. I taught my mom how to make PowerPoints once. She took a little class to like certify herself in Microsoft Office, and it was really funny because I was an assistant professor at the time and I was showing her how to input images and like format text, and she's like, wow, this could really take a long time, couldn't it? I'm like, yes! Like, thank you for that validation finally. Even if your class is prepped, PowerPoints take a long time. Anywho, there's only 9 slides because there's not really any new concepts. This is just applying the same concepts to designs with additional layers of complexity. So there's not a lot that I have to say. I do have a fairly, it's not fairly complex, but it's complex enough example that's built, and we'll go over that, and then we'll see how much time we have for the other classes. But here we are. So more complex designs. Multi-level models. The key idea is that you have multiple dimensions of sampling at the same time in your outcome. In your outcome. So I'm pausing there deliberately. Let me riddle me this. There's an expression for you. Let's say that you're interested in jury behavior, like social psychology kinds of stuff, where you're interested in group think or whatever. I'm going to borrow you, right? Since that's like group stuff or whatever. When you're on a jury, there's one decision at the end of it, right? Guilty or not guilty? Could I use a multi-level analysis to predict decisions made by a jury based on things like the age or personality of the jurors? Or education level, something like that? He's nodding. I was like, that seems like something you could do. Can you do it in a multi-level analysis, though? That's my question. If I have individuals nested in juries, and the outcome I'm predicting is the jury's decision to say guilty or not guilty, is that a multi-level problem? I'm enjoying the expressions, by the way. Everyone has their thinking faces on. It depends, okay.
If you're thinking about a single case, I would say no.
A single case?
Like a single jury,
Oh.
a verdict of some form, I would say no.
Okay, I got 50 juries. And I got 12 people on each.
But now you're doing a case study. I would say maybe, depending on how well your cases are related, if they're not, because every case is a little bit different.
I'm going to say my juries are independent because you can't serve jury duty more than once within a certain time period. That's what would have to be, right? Because the decision is at the group level. So if I were to estimate an empty model for jury decision, what's my level 1 variance going to be? 0. It's all level 2.
Unless somehow you got the votes along the way.
That would be a different outcome.
But that would be a longitudinal study, would it not? Because you have to take multiple votes to get to a conclusion.
That could be longitudinal, but then that would introduce a layer of time, and there still would not be an individual layer. Like if you found a way to ask each juror, like, what did you want or something, then it would be a multi-level problem, because at level 1 is where the answer is measured. But if you have a outcome for a jury, that's a level 2 outcome, there's nothing for individual people's characteristics to do. Like, me being a chick can't predict why my jury voted not guilty. However, proportion of chicks on the jury could. And so, like, he's nodding like, I can answer this. Like, can you predict jury decisions from juror characteristics? Yes, you can, but only at the aggregate level. The proportion of jurors with this characteristic, the proportion of jurors that do this, then you can say jury differences. So as you're thinking about more complex extensions of these models, you have to ask yourself, where is the outcome measured? For what? And it's not a multi-level model unless it's measured at the lowest level. As another example, I'm familiar with designs in, public policy, sociology, political science, those kinds of things, where they're country-level surveys. Every year they survey so many respondents, and then they repeat that process over multiple years, but each time they go in, it's a different set of respondents. So you have respondents at level 1, nested in years at level 2, nested in, say, countries at level 3. If I'm studying something like country GNP in a given year, is that a 3-level model or a 2-level model? I have respondents nested in years, nested in countries, and I want to predict the gross national product in that year for that country. It's 2. What do I do with the people? The only thing that I can do with the people is, in that year, what's the proportion of respondents who did this, or what's the average age, or what's the average whatever. It's the aggregate of the people in the year that would that's the only place where you can have information. So that can be the tricky part, is trying to figure out where's your outcome. So these are basic examples, but they only work in situations in which the outcome is measured at that lowest level. I'm going to use your guys' data, Ricardo and Michael.
Uh-oh.
So you're working with the same data set with different sections of it, essentially, right?
Yes.
And you have 10 units worth of quiz scores, discussion scores, stuff like that. And for each student at the end of the semester, you have a total grade, right? Number of points they earned out of 1,000. So one of the original ideas that we had floated back and forth was to have your score at each unit predict your final outcome score. But that would not be a longitudinal model, because the final outcome only has one. So there's nothing per outcome to predict. You'd have to summarize across the occasions for that outcome up to the student level. Same idea. Does anyone have examples of research or questions they're thinking of that would fall under this discussion?
I have a similar problem. I think I couldn't fix the remote part. So in my internship place, they have some information about accounts that are lost or retained. So they sign up institutions, and at some point the institution can decide, oh, we don't need your service anymore.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, you have a data set of this account is lost, this account is active. But in the data set, they have information about, for example, the number of new faculty each of those institutions have. And they have that in 2022, 2023, 2024, I think 2025.
Mm-hmm.
And then the data they give to us just as if the account is lost or not.
Okay. So let me make sure I'm following up to this point. So are these universities?
Yes.
It's units? So you have repeated measures on universities, on stuff, of faculty numbers, its productivity, et cetera, and you have to decide whether or not a university is eventually going to quit or stay. This is exactly what we're talking about.
And then I was more confused about stuff.
Mhm.
And what I ended up doing, at least proposing for that, is to get more information about when those accounts are actually lost.
Mhm.
Because in some cases, even when we have data from 2022 to 2025, some accounts are lost in 2023, so that is the end of their own information. Some accounts are lost in 2025, so 9 points, so I have to know, okay, when was this lost?
Mhm.
And what I did at the end of what I would have loved to be able to do is to say specifically, for example, if we have, the way we have like 5 time points, I want to be able to say that at the first time point, if we lost this many, or if we have this many of our country, this is overlooked and this is accounted for. Then at the second time point, so that we're able to have, like, before the account is now lost, before the so,
Okay, so you do know in a given year whether they've lost the account or not. And once they're lost, do they stay lost?
yes,
So they don't ever come back? And are some people never lost?
yes, some people are never.
Or universities, sorry, everything's people in my world. Okay, so what you're actually describing, I would approach as something called a survival or time to event model. And what it is in multi-level modeling terms, and I have a book chapter by Yu Pox on this if anyone wants to see it that I thought was really helpful. Picture a binary outcome of loss status, right, 0, 1, and once you're a 1, you stay a 1, and a multi-level model predicting that binary loss outcome per occasion, where occasions are 1 and universities are 2. If you essentially estimate saturated means so that there's a different probability of, the logit of the probability, of course, because we're in binary land, there's a different logit of the probability at each occasion, that then you can essentially compute what's known as a hazard function, which is the probability of being lost conditional that you haven't gotten lost yet. And there's also ways to build into that the idea that it's 2025 and you're not lost, but we don't know what's going to happen in the future. So it's censored in the sense that, like, you could get lost later, and those models are designed in such a way to try and account for that. So I'm not trying to wave my hands too much, but this is an area that is adjacent to where I am in longitudinal, but I've never actually had to learn too much about it. So if you do go down this road, the one thing I will caution you about is the 2 books that I have read about it smush their time-varying predictors in the survival models. So everything that we've been talking about in terms of making sure you have a within university effect and a between university effect that are separated still applies to those models. But yeah, look, the term is hazard is what you want for that. So that's how I would approach it.
I think I ended up doing something.
Okay, cool.
But like you said, I think we had a smooth.
You think what?
We had a smooth effect.
You may have a smushed effect.
We need to think the time at the university level, we should not separate like time varying across like
Any university characteristic that's measured per occasion is also a university characteristic, period. It's the same idea. Yep. So, yeah. If you didn't have that information, let's say that you just know whether or not a university was lost. Logically speaking, if you think of it as putting it as an X, like that's now a university predictor, and you can predict all these other like time-specific university outcomes. The only type of variability that you're going to be able to predict is university variability between. So it's the same idea if you switch around X and Y as what I was just talking about. It's the aggregate of the person things coming up is the only way that you can examine that relationship because it has to be at the university level. So yours would be the aggregate across occasions. So, long answer, but thanks for the story. That fits in perfectly. I love it when that happens. Who else has stories? Okay, so it's 1:39, which means I'm not going to get very far into this, but let me at least set up slide 2. Can we have that? Okay, so the terminology here, you will hear me alternate across these words as synonyms. Cross-classified, cross-random effects are the 2 terms that I hear. The situation we're talking about is when there are multiple kinds of clustering, but they're not strictly hierarchical. So strictly hierarchical would be something like occasions nested in persons within families or students within teachers within schools. But what if students change teachers over time? What if students move to different schools? If you think about patients clustered in healthcare providers, what if you change your doctor? Or your doctor dies. You must change your doctor for some reason. Either they fire you, they die, you lose your health insurance, et cetera, et cetera. So there's these situations in which there's not this nice, like this is nested in this is nested in this kind of hierarchy. There's crossings. So multiple membership models is what it's called when you only have like one kind of cluster, but each person can be in multiple clusters. So like you can change high schools over time, you can change doctors over time. And cross-classified is when there are multiple kinds of clustering. So in the example I'm going to show you, for instance, I think, yeah, it's a different example, but the slide next sets up a different one. I have students who are nested in what Jupox's data, so he calls it primary schools. He means elementary, I think. And I also have where the students went to secondary school, which I think is high school. And if you're predicting high school outcomes, which high school you go to probably matters, right? For all the reasons we just talked about, resources, all that kind of stuff. Does which elementary school you went to matter maybe too? Could. That's a reasonable question to ask. So then if you want to control for clustering, do you control for where they are now? Or do you control for where they were then? Yeah. The answer is yes. Yes, you do. So 2 different kinds of level 2s in that case. So this sort of figure. Students at the bottom are level 1. Students are nested in primary schools as this set of level 2s. Students are nested in secondary schools as this set of level 2s. So there's 3 variance components instead of 2. And what if you have your friends that all live in your neighborhood, so you went to the same elementary school and high school? Could that happen? It could happen. Do you think there's an extra correlation among people who went to the same for both? Could happen. That's an empirical question. Can you think of how that would be operationalized? The unique combination of primary and secondary school as another dimension that we care about. Yeah. But we're talking random effects. A random interaction term at level 2 between primary and secondary. Like, oh shit, you can do that? Yeah, you can do that. Do you know what else this is called, by the way, in other courses? I'm going to point at the 2 of you. She's like, no, I'm like, not me. No, I'm pointing at Mubarak. Don't worry. I'm pointing at Mubarak and Dan as people who would know this. What am I talking about? Have you heard of a random interaction term before in your life? From a different class? You can both phone friends, it's fine. Any guesses? G-theory, ding, ding, ding. You were not in that class? I apologize. You did not, okay. You are completely off the hook for not knowing that. It's totally fine. But I want to make that point, though, because in that you're worried about how much variability is due to the items versus the respondents versus the raters versus the targets, and then you have item by rater and item by target and this. Yeah. Mm-hmm. This, I mean, it's a multi-level problem. So all of those same ideas and designs and stuff, like we can use REML and do the same stuff with greater flexibility. Those models are often taught using least squares in particular, which means you have to have complete data for all crossings, and they have to fit with a general linear model type of outcome. So these things are connected. I think I put an article on your reading list actually doing that connection, if memory serves. Tenhove, is that the one that I wanted? Yes, it is. Inter-rater reliability for multi-level data, a generalizability theory approach. Building on these models, psych methods. So you can take a look at that if you want to know more. All right, 145. You don't want to know more today, right? We're good? Okay. I don't have any more to give, so it's just as well.
Your obligation is over.
That's right. I am no longer contractually obligated to talk to you anymore. But that's okay. I like talking to you. So get your homework done, please. We will be talking about this stuff next week. Let us know if you need anything, okay? Thanks for being here. Hang in there. Have good weekends. Bye for now.